fall
Let's come
asleep.
to order, please. Roll call.
Okay, Nancy Kupka,
Present.
Craig Pepperson,
Here.
Mike Davenport,
Here.
Dan Nicholas,
Here.
and Rick Pagnato,
Here.
and Cheryl Fuller. Here.
Good evening. We have a quorum. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I can't get in this stupid thing.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I apologize on the roll call, Kirk Hoffman. Here. Thank you.
Okay, this meeting agenda includes 2 opportunities for comments from the audience. The first reception of visitors is intended for audience members to address the board about any agenda item on which the board will vote. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to the district goals.
All right, good evening, everybody. I've provided for the board 2 things to get started with the goal work. One is we're going to just flip, the board has had access to all of this in advance, so I'm not going to spend tonight reading it all to you. I just want to highlight a couple of the key points as we go through, as well as in the goals. We actually vote on the goals at the next board meeting. Between now and then, we'll share what they are with the staff. So if there's something that really stands out that you're very concerned about, let me know. So I know to taper that as we address the larger staff. Just some key highlights from last year. You'll see that the domain titles have changed a little bit from this year to last year, or last year to this year, but student experience has remained the same, and that's the one that we're really focused on and building around. One of the things that I'm very proud of from the district office that we worked on last year was the dual credit legislation, and that's still awaiting signature from the governor, but it's either way, it caused a lot of conversation between high schools and universities, and looking forward to that to expand. A lot of work going on around that this year, and obviously into the future as we look at how the student experience is impacted by the master facility plan and what kind of opportunities that provides us for changing and adapting how students learn and experience school. If we go to domain 2, just a couple of things to highlight: the changes in the appraisal system, and next year piloting our personalized professional learning. Those 2 pieces go together to really create our staff growth experience. And then we're adding another primary strand that all of our teachers will experience through our deep equity work. We'll start with our leadership next year.
Can you remind me what SEED stands for?
Acronym is
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Didn't want to mess it up.
He gets points.
Ed gets a gold star.
I lose points.
Obviously, in domain 3, this was a major area of focus this year with the question of the referendum up in our community and what we would do with our facilities. So I'm very proud of all the work that we did there and the excellent work that Jill did in communicating out with everybody that was interested about that. And then we followed up with our second year in review mailing out to all households to highlight our successes over the course of the year. In domain 4, which is our learning environment, this is the funding for the master facility project, as well as all of the work we did around safety, especially in the second half of the year following Parkland and Santa Fe, and the rise in concern around safety and security across all of society. A lot of changes that'll be in effect when students come back or shortly thereafter as a result of that work. And then of course our tradition of good fiscal management in this community. And then finally, future opportunities. The board heard a lot about ESSA last year and our preparation for that, as well as a modification of parent-teacher conference schedules that'll go into effect next year. And then at some point during the course of this year, we'll start looking at long-term strategic planning and what that process looks like moving forward. So those are kind of the key highlights I wanted to touch on from last year, which then lead us into next year's goals. The board has been provided these for the last couple of weeks to take a look at, but just in public, I want to look through some of the key overviews. One of the changes, the leadership team met in June to look at what all of our domains looked like, and we decided we really liked how the core concept of the student experience, so we looked at the other goals from that same kind of view. So what the staff experience, what family and community experience, the experience of the environment, so all the resources and all the physical space, and then finally, what's the future hold for the district. So we've kind of taken all the tasks and activities and fit them inside of there. Tony, if you go on. Every year I go through the exercise of connecting those domains back to the district mission statement. So you'll see the colors correspond with what really matches up. I'm going to break this out in a little different visual in a second. So if you continue, Tony. So a little bit of color there, tough to see, but what I have done is kind of pulled each of these domains apart into what the key kind of concepts are inside of them. So when we look at the student experience, the traits we're looking for in there is that our students have a caring experience, that they feel that they're cared for while they're here, that we develop them so they're able to contribute and be responsible in society, that they're constantly growing and developing with their skills, and that we're providing a challenging academic and extracurricular environment for them. So that's what our work sets out to do, and our goals that are presented to the board. Go ahead, Tony. I'm not going to read through all of them, but we have when we present goals to the board, we kind of have an established baseline set of tasks that we do every year. And what we bring to the board are, here are some changes and improvements that we're making above and beyond what's already expected within what we do as an organization. There'd be no way for us to list everything that we're already doing and already pretty good and solid at. So these are just the areas where we're looking to improve, and you're going to see that in each of these areas. The staff experience, our staff are the intersection between the organization and our students. So they're the ones that are providing these things. They're providing a caring environment. They're providing challenging curriculum and experiences for our students, and helping them challenge the way that they think. They're the ones that are modeling the behaviors that we're hoping, and traits that we're hoping that our students have as they move into adulthood. And really, they're focused on developing each individual student, getting them to grow as much as they possibly can. And then into there, we've listed the goals, the areas that we're working on for that. Next, in the family community experience, we're talking about cooperation with parents in the community. A lot of that this year will happen through the master facility plan. That's an area where people will have a lot of direct input in what's going on. And then we also look for our community and our parents to model those same attributes and behaviors that we want our students to exhibit as well. As I mentioned, master facility plan is big on this one. Also, as we move into strategic planning, but there's going to be some different accountability measures that are reported out through ESSA and how the district is ranked, and we'll have to respond to that into the community and try to explain how all of those things work differently than they have in the past. And then the environmental experience. Once again, master facility plan, and we're really working on providing that environment now that supports the experience, starting with coming back with air conditioning in place and safe environments that feel safer for students. But once again, that's a lot of cooperation with the outside as well. So those things are listed for you there. And then finally, the last domain is future, where we're going moving forward, preparing for a changing world. We've all talked in the past that, you know, it's changing faster than it ever has, and we're aware of that, so keep having an educational system that keeps up with that. That's where we get into the deep equity work that we're doing. But we're also looking at, you know, how does our curriculum impact the future of students? One of the areas where Gina's done a lot of work, and you're going to hear about this at the next board meeting, and we're really digging into is workplace development. And are we supporting students that are going into the workplace as much as we are that are going into the college environment, or those that are blended between the two? Are we supporting them well? So that's an area we're going to look at a lot this next school year. So that's the quick overview. I encourage board members to, you know, dig into those documents that have been provided, and if there's something there that you feel is missing, or you want some clarification on something, please let me know.
So Hank, just, you know, we're, 10 days out from students coming to first day, and this is great. It's a great formal presentation. I just want to know, how are you feeling about the school year? What worried you about the school year? What are you excited about with the school year coming up? You know, with 10 days to go, what are your thoughts about the school year?
Well, the top concern, you'll hear, you know, I'll jump to the master facility plan part, but our top concern was we guaranteed the air conditioning would be ready when everybody came back. So that's been at the top of everybody's concern.
Is it?
And it will be ready. So it will be cold. So it might be too cold. So,
Well.
bring layers. So, you know, that was a huge commitment that we made to the community and to our students and our families. So I wanted to make sure, you know, first and foremost, that was ready for when students return. And then just getting everybody back and getting going on a new school year. Starting fresh is always exciting and heading into it. You know, we made quite a few changes last year around calendar with late starts and with the early start to the school year. It'll be nice to go into a year where that's already settled. People know how that's going to work. You know, there's a lot of concerns around that last year, and students and staff are going to go right into a year where they kind of know how that flow of the year is going to work, which should, you know, calm a lot of nerves heading into the year. And then, you know, I'm looking forward to all of the work we're going to do on designing the new facilities this year. You know, we have over 200 staff members involved in that. We have 75 students. We have 40 community members. So it's going to be, you know, where last year we spent a lot of time talking about what if, now this year it's here. And now it's, you know, exactly what does this look like, what's it going to feel like, what's going to go into each of these spaces. That's going to be a lot of exciting work, and it's going to last for a long time. So there's a lot of pressure on making sure that is correct. So really excited about that work. And then there's other things like the new teacher evaluation. I'm excited to see how that changes the morale and excitement of our staff around that system. And then the introduction of the personalized professional learning, where staff members are going to get to kind of choose their own adventure in what they learn next. I think is exciting work. So a lot of good stuff going on.
Great. Thank you.
I would just like to add one thing. First of all, great work. Thank you very much. As always, you know, we will be meeting in a separate workshop to update superintendent goals. And so I would challenge each of the board members to think about how we are going to tie this all together and how we're going to measure progress. And I know right now Gina's thinking, oh my God, what kind of report can I run next? But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what do some of these more esoteric goals look like so that we really know that we are on track. So just something to think about when you're reviewing these. What is that going to look like when we say objectively, how would you measure that we've met it or that we need to improve because we're not going to meet everything? And you're off the hook.
For tonight.
Yeah, for 5 minutes.
Anything else on our goals?
Any idea what the hesitation is on the governor signing the dual credit legislation?
No, I don't know if
How long has it been?
or if it's just the timing and the process. That
Okay.
it seems like every couple of days another bill gets signed. So
Okay.
don't know if they're just not, so that they can release each one, or
How long's it been on his desk, do you know?
since May. But there's everything he got all at once at the end of legislative session, so I've heard no indication that it wouldn't be signed. So it was my understanding that he was in support of the bill.
Okay. Is there, the timing of this signing, does that impact how and when we implement anything?
No, because really, everything is a ramp up for course selection in, January. So there's work to be done to get students ready.
Get there.
Anyways.
Good.
The biggest thing that's we're gonna have to figure out is staffing and how it impacts what staff can teach dual credit courses, and then how that impacts what our offerings can be, and then long range, how that impacts the development of our staff, our hiring practices, our sectioning, those kinds of things. Because really, when you get to dual credit, that's the biggest challenge we were trying to work past in the legislation, is how that accreditation at the collegiate level intersects with our hiring practices at the high school level, and trying to make pathways so that programs weren't dependent on staff coming and going, that we could build programs and sustain them with current staff.
When a student has, following up on the actual dual credit, when a student gets a dual credit, will that be just reflected on the transcript from the high school then? And or are you, so I know so I had a daughter in the Calc 3 class. So I had to arrange for her transcript to be sent from North Central, because we had to enroll her so would this negate having to do that in the future? Would it negate? No, it would not.
It still needs to be an official transcript from the college or university directly to the other college. So our transcript, even if we somehow reflected on the transcript, even if there was some language, it wouldn't work. It has to go from the university right to the other university. So that's why.
Do you foresee a cost to families for enrolling in a dual credit class?
There could, it's potential, because you're paying for some aspect of the college credit in a partnership with the university.
I know it's beneficial. It costs us some money to do it, but
There is language in there that the cost must be reasonable.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you can't have universities gouge high school students.
well, it's given my daughter a leg up. Enabled her to move past that and into something else while getting credit for that class. So if we could do more of that, wow. I hope the governor signs this into law soon. And I like the presentation, the way, graphically, the way you put things together for us. So,
Anything else on goals?
except for the dark lettering that you can't read on the back. Fix that.
This projector's different.
Everybody can look at it online, too.
Correct.
Tentative budget?
I'll turn this over to Mark. But before I do, I just want to recognize that Mark and Jeree have put in a lot of time over the last several months preparing, as they
Thank
always
you.
do, a proposed tentative balanced budget for the next school year.
So, thank you.
Thank you. And the only reason that it was a bit of a crunch was because we had to move it up to the workshop here in August, so that we'd have more than 30 days to have it on display for our regular meeting in September on the 17th for final approval. So that just, pushed it up a week or two on us. But we got it done, and Jeree did do quite a bit of the work, so I want to recognize her individually.
Thank you.
Really, there's four main things that are driving this budget this time. Certainly the MFP, it doesn't affect our operations, but it's a big part of, in terms of time and things like that for the district, as Hank mentioned. And it's the biggest, focus. You talked about where you ask me what I'm worried about. That's the number one thing for me, is the way that progresses. The second is an internet upgrade that we're doing. We're replacing the backbone for that, and it's coming, there's funding from that is coming from a couple different places, and pulling that together was a little tricky, but we think we've really got it nailed, and we're really getting you'll see in a minute when I go through the revenues, a big kick from E-rate on that, so we're trying to capture that now while it's available. So we'll get about just under $250,000 of additional E-rate this year that'll help offset our costs there. And we used up some dollars, if you had a chance to read all the memo and caught that part of it is the developers' contributions that we're using. We get developers' contributions when a new subdivision goes in or when somebody's, adding homes or with kids or where there's residential properties. We have agreements with the municipalities involved that we would get a certain amount based on the size of the house and the impact. They're also called impact fees, impact to the district. And so we've been accumulating those in the in a site and construction fund, not in an operating fund. And this is exactly what it can be used for, any kind of upgrade, any kind of additional thing. And so it was really good timing. We're basically getting dollar for dollar match on that with the E-rate. So that was a nice project. Took a little bit of pulling back and forth because E-rate has a lot of strings attached to it, so we had to be careful about what we claim against that and different pieces. The third item really is and really the bigger story for our operating funds is the special education growth. We are seeing a second year in a row. Last year, we had a really inordinate number of incoming special needs students. We had 23, were the highest before that had ever been 13. And so we had 10 additional last year, and we were stressed for it this year in the budget. It caused some issues. Now, the positive side of that, I guess, if you look at it, is that the following year, we get a pretty high recovery of some of those costs for the private placements. We have kids that are placed outside of the district, not just general special needs students, but kids that we don't serve in our district. It's called private placement. And so we get, it's usually about $30,000 a student coming back on some of those. But there's also special ed transportation. Those kids have to be transported to those farther away areas, and we get about 80% of the transportation cost. Now, this year, we only had 14 incoming students that were really high needs, and 7 of those were very high needs students. And it's still a pretty big number for us, and we only have 2 or 3 that we think are going to age out and actually leave. So it's one of those years where we're going to have some big specialized costs. Lisa Ballo gave a presentation, as you recall, the last meeting, and she said, we're saving $200,000. Really what she's doing is we were going to see $1 million worth of increase, and she got it down to $800,000 because of the new kids coming in. And our goal is always to place kids in our district if we can, just so they can be with their peers, they can be with, but there's going to be a number of those this year that are going to be outplaced that we're not going to be able to keep in. So you're going to see some of that as I go through it. And then really the last thing is, I think for the last 10 years or so, I've been telling you interest rates are going to come back. And so this year, I'm not lying to you. They already have, somewhat. I was amazed that we could keep interest rates at 0.25 for so many years, 0.25%. There were years when we had almost $3 million worth of interest income. So even though, if you look at the revenues here, that's the first item that'll jump out at you, 64.5%. Increase in the interest income. Part of that is because the state is funding us for at least our general state aid portion on time, as opposed to having $1.8 or $2 million worth of in arrears payments. So they are getting better with paying the big part, and it's really because the evidence-based model grouped in a lot of the things that they used to defer to different periods. And so now the evidence-based model is all under the state aid schedule, which they have to do in the course of the fiscal year. So they've only made exceptions to that a couple of times. So that's really helped. But also, we have our interest rates just for liquid funds is 2.1% now. Last year at this time, it was 0.85. And so it's more than doubled. During the year, it's gone up a little bit, and I'm hoping that this year, we even see it going up. The Fed's making some changes, expected to make 2 more increases. That has not a direct correlation, but it does influence where their interest rates are going. And so, and there's a lot of talk about all the trade wars and tariff wars, all those things are influencing some of, and also the size of the national debt is going to raise treasury bond rates. But the country is going to have a lower risk, a higher risk and a lower rating by the agencies because of the growing deficit, and that will actually drive up interest rates on T-bonds, which then that really drives up the CDs and all the others. So we're hoping that it does, not necessarily proud of the reasons, but we're just hoping that it does go up this year. And this could actually be a modest increase, a conservative increase. It could more than double this year if rates do start to pop a little bit more.
Does that change your strategy or thought around when to issue debt for the master?
Yeah, you're jumping ahead of me, but it's good. You're right on top of it. Because right now, you see, originally the plan was $40 million of bonds issuance. I put it up to $60 million this year, just because we may push that button a little bit more, depending. We expect to go in January of 19 with 40 million, but if market rates are looking like those are going to get worse on us, we may either pull back or push harder if we think it's going to be worse going down, even going into the future.
And how many years do we have to use it once it's issued?
I think it's we have 5 years to issue and 3 years to spend.
Okay.
So you can't sit on the money, and that's why 60 million is kind of a limit for us. And we'd have to, get committed to some contracts pretty quickly on that. Okay. So going through the revenues, you'll see that, it's pretty normal that the things that are popping out again are general and other state aid. That's going up because last year we had elevated special needs students, and we're going to get reimbursed for it in this year. It's a year behind, so we have to front fund a lot of that. And on the federal side, it's the E-rate is pushing that. We're going to, that $224,000 primarily, the increase in E-rate that we're going to see. We'll see some of the federal programs actually drop, but that E-rate is kind of carrying us through. And it's obviously going to be dedicated to the operating funds because we're going to be spending a lot of money out of the educational fund for that as well. So I think if we hop to expenditures, Tony, you'll see some of the same things on that side that, again, are going to drive it, some of the expenditures and some of the revenues for next year. Salaries, though, 3.7% in salaries. The actual increase, the average increase for an ongoing employee was 2.1%. That was the average. But we have 10 new FTE or 10 more FTE this year than we did last year. Part of that is special ed, but also involves at each campus security. It's a social worker and a counselor, I believe it is. Is that? Do I have it right there? I had 2 at each campus, so we're driving that up. We've added lead campus security positions. So we have new bodies coming into the district that are going to drive up the overall cost. Benefits is at 2.9%. Part of that is because we have new employees that are going to add benefits. But really, we have a nice year here. We're the biggest expense we have, or the most expensive plan we have for insurance is the PPO program, and which is kind of expected. But we were able to just change the benefit structure for that to avoid any increase this year. So we're basically, and it's going to be out-of-network services. If anybody goes out of network, they're going to get hit a little harder, and that'll help offset any with the small increase that we projected for that. Talked about purchase services, and really that's the biggest thing in there is going to be special ed transportation is huge. That's about $100,000 of the increase. Just in special needs, but also the transportation services are going to go up just because the economy is booming, and we already approved the contract earlier, if you recall, for transportation. It's going up because the shortage of drivers is driving those costs up. Supplies is dropping, and we're really pleased why it's dropping, because last year we spent about $68,000 on spot coolers trying to cool down those areas of the building. So bang, that was a nice thing to drop. Otherwise, the supplies are about the same as where we were last year. Capital outlay, again, is up because of the internet background that we talked about. And then tuition, as I mentioned, we have, there's 14 new kids coming in, 7 are really high-need students, and that's a big number for us. Last year was really high, this year is not as high, but it's the second highest we've had in a while.
Mark,
Yeah,
I have a question about the fiber job, because we're,
about the what?
the fiber that we're
Oh,
doing
sure,
for the internet,
yeah.
so we're buying our own fiber, right?
Right.
Is there going to be any discounts associated with like our monthly service charge? I know we talked about this a while ago, but I can't remember, because we're actually going to own our own fiber lines.
I don't know if there'll be the fiber itself was greatly discounted. There's governmental pricing on that, and so that we really get that at a low cost, and then the E-rate offsets that. So the install, I don't know that it'll have an impact. I don't know if Hank,
Like
if you
our
have any
monthly
insight on that.
service fees associated with,
I don't know we have cable in some spots, right, we have T1 lines, actually. I don't know if we're going to be replacing those. That's probably a good question for Rod. I didn't get into the project
Okay.
that deeply.
yeah, thinking we potentially could, I don't know.
We didn't schedule any discount.
Drops drastically once you get your own, but I
Yeah.
haven't looked into it.
Okay,
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah, it's going to be roughly 10 times faster.
absolutely,
That's the benefit of that fiber.
yeah.
And with the
absolutely.
We'll take it.
additional data that we're using, it's needed. So the good news, as we go to the next one, Tony, is the fund balances. And, the magic thing for us here is to get this lower right-hand corner, if you can all see it, but to get that to 0, so that our expenditures match the revenues incoming. And so we did. You notice our percentage of reserve, though, drops by 0.2%, and it's really the same dollar amount of reserve. It's just because our revenues have grown so high,
It's a percent.
which is making it drop. But it still is in a concern level for me. 3% is kind of our trigger before we have to do something. Because we defer our early taxes, we could still operate our district with 0 reserve, but we wouldn't want to.
That'd be horrible.
Really, we want to keep it at 3%, and this is, it's been pretty steady on the revenue and expense side, so it's not changing a whole lot here. We're able to keep it balanced, but it's something for us to focus on going forward, and hopefully we can even find some savings along the way with some other things. The next exhibit is the non-operating funds. I don't talk about this too much during the year because it's pretty dormant. It doesn't happen, it's not going on. But it's part of the total overall budget, so I wanted to bring it to you. And here's, Dan, we see under capital projects, the revenues, $60 million. That's $60 million of that is tax, possibly bond issuance, and $593,000 is expected interest income for that fund over the year. So that interest income will provide a little bit of a pad for us in addition to our contingency that we have for it. Haven't really worked out. It'll depend on when we start to issue all the other pieces, and we'll be able to get a harder number in terms of what the total will be at the end of the project. Certainly, it'll be over $1 million, but that's only 1% of the project. So we'll see how, it depends on how fast the phasing goes and how fast it's expended. We haven't done enough of the plan design to know exactly how it's going to be phased. We have some pretty good ideas, but they haven't been able to put it out there in phasing and tell us when those contractors are going to get paid. So we haven't been able to do a real hard schedule for that. And then really, the long-term debt, the thing that I always like to be able to talk about is this bottom item, the amount that we pay from operating funds. We're still paying $2.3 million a year out of our operating funds for large capital projects that we've been doing internally, as opposed to issuing taxes or issuing, bonds that would incur taxes. And so I'm still, we're very proud of that in this district, and so we want to keep reminding the community that we do try and keep our tax rate as low as we can. That's it for the overview of it. I don't know if there's any questions.
So you feel, so in revenues, the only part of revenues that gave me pause was seeing such an increase in revenues from the state and federal government. I don't know why it makes me nervous, but it does. Actually getting money, but you're feeling good about that.
Well, yeah, those are some of the areas that they've been pretty good about it. Special needs students, they messed up, I won't say that, but they did mess up. They did take $250,000 from corporate personal property replacement tax, which was targeted for the schools, and that was, a big impact to us there because it was done at the last minute, and so it caught us short. And so they go after some of those other areas, but there's some things that I think are really hard for them to cut. And also it's tied to their ability to get federal money at the state level. I'm not so worried about the Fed. I'm worried more about the state. And the state needs to have a certain amount of effort, they call maintenance of effort, in special needs pricing and spending, or they lose federal money. And so that's what I think keeps them a little more honest with the special, and they have been. I mean, there have been years that they would all of a sudden prorate. I think it's been as low as 71 or 72%, unexpectedly, just because they ran out of money in that pipeline, But no, they've been pretty good. So yeah, we'll watch it. We watch it and we monitor it.
That's the only part that made me nervous.
Oh yeah.
It was like,
Hey, as long as the checks don't bounce, we're taking them.
yes, that is true.
Yeah. Oh, it's direct deposit? Oh,
It
okay.
is, yeah.
I'm sorry. Old fashioned.
They sit at ISB approves a check and they sit at the treasurer's office for months, because they don't actually authorize them for issuance.
Oh.
So they just sit there until they get enough cash in. And so,
And then they spread it out.
yeah.
I was wondering on the property tax side of things, was there any concern about people accelerating their property tax payments in, last year into this year, and how that could skew what's happening going forward?
It doesn't affect us because we defer that entire first portion. That really lopsided with the first, like the first and second payments. And some districts that are cash basis did get a ton of an additional hit in their first payment that shows up in their fund balances, but then the second one is going to be lower. And so they're trying to deal with that. How are they going to address that? And that's a typical district. But going back into my auditing days, I knew that there's a principle that allows you to defer even a cash payment if it's obligated to another period. And so they could, and I've advised a couple of my friends that are cash basis, I said, this is what you need to do is you can still defer a portion of that. You can create a liability for that because your board has decided that's a liability that belongs to the next period. So they can do what we're doing already. But for us, all of our taxes are recognized into the same fiscal year, so it won't disrupt our recognition at all.
I can see how that could potentially skew your looking forward, thinking, okay, well, things got, so now I've got more coming in.
It just means that we're pushing off as a deferred liability into the next year, a bigger number than we have in the past, but it doesn't affect us.
Well, there's been a lot of construction going on. So,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
there has.
There has.
Hopefully it'll all benefit us.
Yeah, anything that, involves housing at all, which there's obviously is downtown, and some others. There's actually one south on Lamont Road that's starting to pick up a little bit. It's just on the very southernmost part of our border, and we get contributions from the developers for, our infrastructure, so that should be a little extra. It's hard to guess at those, how much it is, until they really have all the plans set.
Well, excellent job getting things balanced again for us this year.
It was a lot. I mean, we always,
It's a lot of fun.
when we don't balance, then I will blame everybody. So when we do balance, I have to praise everybody. There's a lot of work, and there's a lot of, we had to go to the buildings and say, okay, we're putting all this technology in. Can you give us 50,000 each of the buildings from your normal allocation for technology, and things like that. So everybody had to pitch in on this one.
Seems like good news.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that shows up on action later tonight to allow us to put that on display.
Architect agreement? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
So just as I was alluding to earlier, we're on track for the air conditioning project. That has delayed some of our other projects like cleaning and getting stuff moved around, so it's going to be a mad project, right, leading right up to everybody getting back to school, but they'll all come back to a nice, cool place to work and learn. So we also have the security improvements that are coming online here, and some of those will stretch into the start of the school year, just because of timing of everything else. But shortly after the school year starts, all of those pieces will be in place, and we sent out an announcement to all students, parents, staff, community about those changes today. Well, it's going out tonight. So
Tonight? Okay,
so that will go out.
I didn't see anything.
It's in process of going
Okay.
out, so.
What might stretch into the year a little bit from the
Well,
security
like
standpoint?
the Blue Point system, that's the pole
Yeah.
alarm systems, like fire alarms for the police department. Those may all be installed, but coordinating it all with our PA systems and all of that kind of stuff might still be working its way past the start of the school year. We're still waiting for a couple of the security windows for the pass-throughs and the vestibules, because there's it's a custom-made product to arrive, so a couple of those things are still on back order, or, still on their way in to get in place. But carpeting it north is still, we're still waiting for that for the administrative offices. So a couple
my.
pieces still in the works. So,
Sorry.
but making good
Good.
progress.
Didn't mean to throw you off track.
No, that's all right. AC-wise, we're in great shape. It was kind of cool to walk the building and see all that stuff in place. And one of the things I took notice of is when they built North High 91 years ago, 2 years ago, they actually put in all of the space in channels and tunnels underneath North High that we're taking advantage of 90 years later. So it's kind of cool
Wow.
to see the long-term
Forethought.
planning and forethought that went in place in the construction of that building.
That's really cool.
So Jim and I have been talking as we look at developing the next phase of our buildings, making
can we
sure
do?
that 50 or 90 years from now, they're walking around saying, wow, those guys were smart, not the other way around. So very interesting to see. And then over the last week, we went and visited New Trier. This week, we're going to go visit Naperville Central. Both Mike and Sherelle attended the New Trier tour, so I've asked them to just provide a little bit of perspective on what they saw.
You go first.
Ladies
Mr.
first. No, I
No,
insist.
Mr. Architect, you go.
Had to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Gee, he's got notes.
well, yeah, so we were asked, everybody who went on the tour was asked to compile their notes and share on a Google Doc, so I did, and so I'm not going to read them all to you. Just a few highlights. I mean, it was really beneficial in going. I think it spurs, some ideas, just thoughts you wouldn't have had otherwise. And so a couple of things I noticed, I thought were exceptional were when we went through the applied arts area, which is really impressive. They have glass blowing too, by the way, at New Trier. Wow. But at any rate, they took advantage of reusing a lot of existing equipment by restoring it, even adding color to it, and in order to repurpose and extend the usefulness of the equipment. I thought that was a good idea, and just across the board. Just wondering what kind of things do we have that maybe with a little bit of adjustment or improvement might find useful going forward. One of our tour guides talked about using creative spaces to inspire creativity, and I like that. I like that as even a theme for what we're doing overall, overarching. And they've used new design to change how things were taught, and I thought that was also kind of a wonderful idea. So a big part of this was not just seeing the facilities, but hearing from the teachers and staff about their experiences with those facilities now that they're in place. And so they had received contributions from donors to help pay for their black box theater and some of the improvements to it. And so it occurred to me that that's something we could do as well. And then you wonder, are there other aspects of what we're doing that might, community groups might support in some way? Just, a thought for additional revenue stream there. And they had made some significant changes to their library, and in that process, it ended up culling down a good portion of their books. And I thought that was intriguing and interesting, and I hadn't thought about how that, of course that might happen, but across the board, you wonder, just going into any classroom, any room that we have, we're so used to making the most out of what we have. And in fact, the day after we toured New Trier, I came up for our meeting about our auditorium planning here at South. And I toured afterwards our auditorium, back of the stage, underneath, places I hadn't been in. I got to tell you, I mean, wow. We've got a lot of things we need to do here, and what we're doing is really needed. And we've been making such great use out of that space. It's so impressive. Now I have a new appreciation for the quality of the work that goes on with our fine arts staff and our students, that they're able to put on the kind of productions they've been able to do with the kind of facilities that they have. It makes it all that much more remarkable after you see what we're living with. And so I know we're really great at making use out of what we have, but so many processes and even things that we have are the result of what we have in terms of space. And when we get new spaces, we'll have, it should change the way we're doing things. And so it's going to cause, I think, a lot of, so not only library books getting maybe reduced, but what other things might be impacted as well. It's kind of exciting. There was a lot of talk about how they'd open things up. So there's a lot of glass everywhere. And they discovered that maybe they did a little too much to that transparency and needed to install some privacy shading, some things of that nature. And so that was interesting to hear. Too much of a good thing, maybe it's not so good. So they have a tech support Genius bar out in the open. That was cool, right? Yeah. I mean, and the kids, they use that like crazy. It's been really popular. You've basically got the countertop. I imagine they have students sitting there ready to assist kids that are walking by, having issues with their Chromebook or what have you, and then they have the tools and resources immediately behind them to take care of that, either in the, out in the open for quick things and stuff back behind,
like
supplies.
Apple.
Yeah, and that was part of the idea.
The Apple store.
They had, a lot of creative modular seating. Mm-hmm. And we think, yeah, that's great, right? We want to do that sort of thing too. But I thought it was interesting the way, not only functionally how that was a good thing, but the way it added more interest, color, comfort, human scale to the environment. And so there's a lot of other benefits to changing out some of our furnishings other than just that they work better. Mm-hmm. There were some found opportunities, meaning, that you have all the planning that goes into this, but ultimately, as a result of needing to design a new culinary area or something, that may make, as a consequence, some additional space adjacent to that it's a consequence, you have to have it because you need this other thing. And so there might be some opportunities to, and yet we haven't even found yet in all the things that we're doing. And then I also know that carpet was essential to sliding furniture. So we think about our flooring and function and usefulness but more than just the carpet making a space feel more inviting and helping maybe with some sound absorption, but functionally, really, if you're going to have furniture that you're going to move around, slide around, and chairs are going to slide around, pieces are going to slide around, because you want the space to be uber adaptable and from one class period to the next and what have you. You know, that carpet's kind of essential to that type of furniture that you're picking. So I had a ton more, but that's what I highlighted to share.
So I want to say ditto to a lot of what Mike said. I actually looked at the notes, what was put out there to be shared, and a lot of the information was pretty much spot on my thoughts. So it was interesting how we all went and we observed some of the same things. What I will say, I talked with the superintendent kind of on the sidebar, and what was important to me too is finding out, has this been effective to the learning environment? And he said, absolutely. So that's one of the things that's very important, because we're making a major, we had a referendum, this is a major deal, and letting the community know that this has absolutely been an effective thing for the way our students learn. It's definitely not the high school that I went to, that's for sure. So going there, it was amazing experience. Some of the things that Mike talked about, I want to comment on, is that the use of the organizational space. Some of the folks that went with us took the pictures of how they utilized the organization of hanging things on the wall and organizing their materials that way. I'm assuming, you know, that was one of the thoughts I had. When you open up space, then where do you start to hide things?
Yeah.
Because things still have to live in the room. And the fact how they utilized the organization, putting things in cabinets, hanging things around the classroom, was not only aesthetic to the eyes, but it works, it's functional. The furniture, I was very interested in the furniture, and some of the folks on the tour would have noticed me sitting in almost every chair I could, because they look so modern, and I know I purchased modern furniture at my house, and you can only look at it.
Yeah.
It's not very comfortable. But all of the furniture was comfortable, and Mike mentioned the colors and kind of how they used the material, the furniture. I loved all of it, because me having a daughter just finishing up high school, I know they do a lot of they don't texting, but more so that Instagram stuff. So there's not a lot of talking. So I like the fact that these environments that they're creating with the seating is very collaborative. And I think that's a big deal, especially bringing that back into, as kids are retreating, I would say, from at least the ones I know, from that communication, that verbal communication. I think these type of classroom settings will help bring that back into collaborative thinking and collaborative and talking and brainstorming. And so that was really important for me to watch and see. Mike mentioned the black box theater and the donations. I thought that was really cool. Unfortunately, the Black Box Theater was donated by, it was a donation started by parents who actually lost their children.
Yeah.
So it obviously was, and for two different reasons. I think one was when I read it, one was a car accident and one was cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, not what anybody want to experience, but what a way to honor and remember your children, because both of them were very much into the theater. So the donation piece of having the community get involved, and I think they led the donation, if I remember the story correctly, in order to have that kind of theater in honor of them. So there is room for that, not that we want the scenario associated with it, but room to bring the community, get the community involved to help raise donations for things that may not be economically feasible for us. Natural lighting. I love the natural lighting piece as my eyes are going. So it is nice to have utilized all of the glass was instrumental in the skylights and all the natural lighting that they could take advantage of in the school. And then finally, I just say, I saw it as smart utilization space. And I think that's really important. I kind of coined my own term of smart utilization space, of how they kind of use the space and thought out the movable seats, the carpeting, just really making everything as functional as possible. So I overall thought it was a great tour. I really like the work that they've done. It gives us a lot to think about and try to kind of mimic a lot of the things we saw there.
How many people did we have go on the tour?
17.
So, good group.
And it's important to note that the lead design architect at New Trier is on our project and is a South grad.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
So that's kind of the report out. We go out on another tour this week, and we have a whole bunch of meetings upcoming with the architect over the next few weeks in the design team. So we're getting closer to having stuff to be able to present and have phasing, and we're getting closer. So more to come over the next few weeks.
And speaking of the architect.
Speaking of the architect, we have a proposal that the board will be voting on later on tonight that the administration is recommending. This is for the additional architect agreement for the design and all of the drawings for the master facility plan. This is with White, who we've been working with. Remember, we already have a master agreement with them for all of our regular capital and year-to-year life and safety projects. So this is an additional addendum on top of our master agreement that just talks about the master facility plan itself. We went back and forth for quite a while to come to this agreement. And we talked to other school districts in the area to see kind of how their deals worked. What we've seen is on average about a 7% fee. We're at a total of 6.8%. Although we've had Mark and I and Jim negotiated in to get a couple other things like on-site representation as built, the record drawings of what actually happens at the end, not just what's proposed at the beginning, included in that cost, which are usually, as we saw in other school districts, additional costs at the end or outside of that flat percentage fee. So we feel like we've been able to negotiate a pretty favorable deal for the district, and recommend the board approve it tonight. And Mark and I will take any questions at this point.
I just had one question. So I know that we've got less than a % fee for bid packages and things like that, but we all are also hiring I forget what the exact term is, but like construction manager, correct?
Correct.
So, okay. But we still need all, even with that person in place, we still need all these services from White?
Is
Yes.
the construction manager like a GC? Is it the general contractor?
Yeah,
So
similar.
that's outside of White?
Correct.
Yes.
That's within the budget that we took to the community, but it may be White, it may be another company. We'll go out through a process
Okay.
to select that
Kind of like
individual.
to have a different
And,
person than White.
then we'll come back at a later date with a recommendation of the board as to who that will be. But that'll be a competitive process to see who wins those services.
Okay. And you put, I'm certain it goes out for bid like everything else to kind of determine.
Yeah, the first step we have out right now, a request for qualifications, because we want to see what CMs we call them, have experience with large renovation projects like this, so that we don't get a bunch of mom and pops, so this is really complex work. So we put that out. We're going to look at that. We're going to then bring in, we think, 3 or 4 for interviews, and then we'll see where we go from there. I'll make a recommendation to the board based on the qualifications and actually the overall cost for that service.
Okay.
So as we walk through that process, we'll keep the board updated as to how we're progressing.
And what's our timeline on that? Sorry.
What's a,
Timeline on that?
I think it's a September approval. We're trying to get it for the September board. Did I get it right, Therese? Yeah. I always check with her. She knows.
All right. Thank you.
I did have one quick question. So refresh my memory. We have a master agreement with them. And so is there an amount that we pay them every year for that, regardless of whether or not they're doing anything for us?
No, it's based on the percentage of construction, so it's, no.
Projects.
Yeah, it's, now,
Okay.
we actually went with this first whole level of the HVAC, the air conditioning, without really a hard contract in hand. It was kind of, if the referendum didn't go, we were still going to pay them something, but it wouldn't be their full amount that they should have, even though they were having to design that ahead of time so we could hit the ground running. So it was a good faith effort on their part to take that effort for us. But now it's just based on the actual construction itself, including the HVAC and everything that they've done. So it's in the right percentage for what, this is actually not one big project. If it was one big project of a new school, this would be maybe a little bit high, I think, but it's really two projects where they've got to put people on both sides going up at the same time, and very complex projects. You know, there's going to be things we're going to discover that we didn't think we were going to discover in this, and they're going to have to respond quickly, rewrite, redraw, do different things. So, I mean, that I do think that it's a very fair rate, and I think they have something like 30 people that work for White & Company that live in our district, and so this is they've wanted to do this,
Right.
you know.
No, I'm really happy that they're that they're the ones working for us. I was just wondering if perhaps, just to illustrate that this is a pretty good deal, that going forward, it's hard to imagine that there's going to be a lot of things that they're going to be doing for us in the next few years with this project that might, if we weren't doing this project, they would still be doing things for us under our master agreement for capital projects, that some of those things are getting rolled into this, more than likely, at least portions of them.
There's small projects that they could do, but it's at a higher percentage for the smaller scope of.
Right, and it becomes part of this, and so I think there's some economy with
So we're
that.
saving on that.
One thing to
I think is worth noting is all.
Yeah, there'll be several things to just
a good
more
point.
kind of flesh out what
Thank
Mike's
you.
saying. There's going to be several things that, even you saw it this year as we did some of the lighting work.
Right.
That we threw in additional bid packages that kind of fell under that
Yep.
deal rather than our other deal, right?
Yep.
So we'll get some economy of scale in multiple ways through this agreement.
Okay. Anything more?
Okay.
Handbooks?
Last month, the board asked that we delay on the vote on student handbooks until we could prepare a summary document of the change, the differences between North and South High. So Scott put together kind of a one-page, pretty much summary of the changes. There's not really substantial differences between the two documents. It's more, the nuances of the two schools. But as we said at that last meeting, we'll be working on creating a full district handbook over the course of this year so that both schools are kind of operating under that same district-approved document.
That's good.
So we recommend tonight that the board adopt both of those.
And please, I found that very helpful, so please, thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Yeah, he got the joy of reading.
Yeah. Light reading.
Yeah.
Anything else on the handbooks? Okay, moving on to recommendations for action. We need a motion for the Board of Education to accept the tentative budget for the 2018-19 budget for display purposes and establish 6:45 PM September 14th, 2018 in the Administrative Service Center Community Room for the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
Troy Pavasich?
Aye.
Rick Pavanato? Aye. Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller? Aye. Nancy Cook?
Aye, motion carries. We now need a motion for the Board of Education to approve the standard form of agreement.
Excuse me. On the tentative hearing, you mentioned the 14th, not the 17th. I believe it's the 17th.
Right, it's the 17th.
It's the 17th for
Ah.
tentative hearing.
Yeah.
And perhaps I typed that in wrong. I apologize if I wrote that in wrong.
I probably read it wrong.
No, it was typed
And we've always
correctly.
made it, just for the record, they always make it 15 minutes after the meeting starts, so that people have time.
So do we need to do it over again?
No, she said 6:45, but
no, the date.
Oh.
So what is the right, what is the correct date?
17th.
The 17th. I
17th.
misread it. It is September 17th. Do you still approve the motion?
Yes.
Dan, you still?
Yes.
Second.
Second?
Okay, Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
Terry Pavasich, yes.
Terry Pavasich?
Yes.
Thank you. Caminado?
It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Still
I'm
approving the
tired.
tentative budget?
It's on the 17th.
Thank you. Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Thank you. And Cheryl Fuller?
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka?
Aye, and we still carry, and thank you for being.
Thank you. No,
Okay,
it's over there.
we're doing the vote. because of
Doing the vote, so we have the
Okay.
correct date.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, now we need a motion, and I'll read this more slowly. A motion for the Board of Education to approve the standard form of agreement between owner and architect between Community High School District 99 and White and Company, and authorize administration to sign the aforementioned agreement.
So moved.
Mike?
Second.
Terry?
Thank you. Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Terry Pavasich?
Aye.
Rick Caminado?
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller?
Aye.
Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka?
Aye, motion carries. Now we need a motion for the Board of Education to approve the North High and South High 2018-19 student handbooks.
So moved.
Second.
Terry, Mike?
Thank you. Terry Pavasich?
Aye.
Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller?
Aye.
Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
Rick Caminado?
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka?
Aye, motion carries. And finally, we need a motion for the Board of Education to adopt the resolution authorizing July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2023, performance-based superintendent's contract with Dr. Henry Thiele.
So moved.
Second.
Before we make that, could I make a statement to fellow board members?
You can, or you can wait till we take your
Well,
vote.
it's, we just.
Well, now that we've seconded it,
It's
we
been
can.
moved and seconded,
I
so.
apologize because there were two people.
Discussion,
voting, So I
right?
just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure. who
I
was-
think, I don't know, who motioned? Mike?
Motion.
Mike and I
And I thought
second.
Cheryl also motioned.
Oh,
I
go
did,
ahead.
but Mike can motion.
So- Terry seconded?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Unless, Sherelle, do you want the second?
Okay.
That's fine.
Seconded, thank you.
That's fine.
I just, like I said, there were many voices.
Rick, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I did. First, I wanted to thank Dr. Thiele for his time tonight before the meeting, and I did want to say something to my fellow board members. I wrote it down because I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but I need to say it to you guys. As long as I've been on this board, when people ask me about taxes and spending, I could honestly say to them, this board will spend your money, but it'll think twice before they do. It was a true statement until tonight. I join my colleagues in recognizing we've been well-served and thanking Dr. Thiele for those efforts. But good work is never, nor should it ever be, particularly public funding, a license to write blank checks. I agree Dr. Thiele has done a great job these last 2 years, and I also agree that he should receive a well-deserved pay increase. However, I do not believe the amount that was discussed, over 20% pay increase, over 30% if you include the TRS component, is financially responsible to the taxpayer of this district. A significant number of our residents, the residents who are taxed to provide education to our children, are on limited incomes. Nearly a quarter of the properties we tax receive some sort of assistance, and we're to tell these folks just barely making it, that we cannot assure the district of continued quality education without paying our superintendent. Do we mean it? Some things are plain wrong. They can be diced, sliced, and parsed to make particular tangents feel right, but they're still wrong. This is wrong. District 99 does much right. Most things, perhaps, but make no mistake, that good work has been happening for a very long time. It's a function of the dedicated staff, motivated students, and supportive families that make up our community. We have debated this contract for over 2 months, and yet no one in the public knows what is in it. Yes, I know that the salary will be posted on the school's website, and yes, I know that superintendent contracts can be FOIA'd. If this current contract was debated and discussed in public over that time frame, would all of you still agree to its salary and incentives? Before any of us cast a vote, I think we should all have in front of us a long-term cost of this move. What should the rest of our staff expect for their next contract? When does reasonable and deserved become ridiculous? And the optics of this does matter, especially after passing the referendum. As I said before, first and foremost, our obligation is to provide for the education of our students and to be fiscally responsible to our constituents. This contract is not. And so I just wanted to say it out there. I wanted to give my opinion on that. So.
Well, I'd like to comment and just say that, Rick, I totally respect your opinion, and I understand where you're coming from. From my perspective, we have worked hard over the last several years to bring all of our staff up to market value. I don't think that we've brought anybody way above market value, but we've brought people up to market value. In my opinion, part of the reason that we're doing this is to bring Dr. Thiele's position to that equilibrium. I don't think our past superintendent was adequately compensated. I think we've been operating under budget or under market value for a very long time, and I really see this as bringing this position up to market value, making it a more competitive position and frankly a more desirable position. Do I agree that Dr. Thiele deserves to be commended for his work here? Absolutely. This is not to take anything away from what he's accomplished. But that, from my perspective, is why we're doing this, just as we've brought some of our support staff salaries up, some of our teacher salaries up. We've brought people up to be more in line with what the market would require. Anything else?
So Hank, before we vote, I just wanted to say, when we vote, I'm going to vote no for the contract. It's not a vote against you. I'm very happy you're a leader in this district. I think you've done an excellent job the last 2 years. Look forward to having you be our leader for the next 5 years of the contract. Contract is well-deserved, and I think you deserve a significant raise. I agree with many, if not all, of Rick's points about the amount of the increase, the amount of the compensation. I view my role on the board being my fiduciary responsibilities. I take that very seriously, and I just can't approve the budget, the contract as high it is. But I want to make sure that you're aware I support you fully, and anything you need in the future, I think I am, and everybody is here for you.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to say too, so as obviously a community member, a parent that has one student that's just graduated out of the Downers Grove school system and one to come, a 7-year-old, so has a while to kind of get in there and become a student. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I did my research as research was provided to us as well. And I think, looking at what we were able to see across the community and across the school districts, that we have not, to kind of ditto what Dr. Cooper said, we have not gone above and beyond what the market is showing out there. I think right now we have some really important things that we are looking at. We have our master facility plan and a lot of movement, great movement, I think, in our school district. I think we want to keep very talented people in our district. I also believe that making changes is disruptive. If we were to go out and try to find another superintendent, is very disruptive to our district. So what does that mean to us in the long run? Sometimes, I've thought about those things. So again, a person who is very financially responsible, I am comfortable with the decision that we have made and very open to any discussions from my perspective, things I've thought about and worked through, just discussing that with the community, any community members that's interested in talking to me.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'll just start off by saying, I'll get my opinions out there too. First, in answer directly to the question, there is absolutely nothing about this, had this whole thing been negotiated in public, that I would not be agreeing.
Same here.
Yeah, and so I didn't appreciate the suggestion that might be the case by asking that question. In terms of the percentage increase, what you're saying is true, that it represents a larger percentage increase than what we might normally see. But our starting point here was a very low contract comparatively. And I was part of the previous board that was fortunate enough to bring Superintendent of Dr. Thiele's caliber to our district at what I thought was a really good deal for the district. And I have to say, had I known a few years ago, that he was going to be as good as he has turned out to be, I would have been willing to pay more then. But we were taking a bit of a chance, and I think Dr. Thiele recognized that coming in, and he has more than exceeded our expectations in most measures, and for that, it makes sense that we would pay for that. And make no mistake here, too. What Sherelle has said. The disruptive cost of the district and having to, change horses would be severe. And make no mistake, while we recognize all the wonderful things that have happened here in the last couple of years, the rest of the state of Illinois does too. And we talked tonight about dual credit a little bit and his leadership on that. And these are things that, these are extra things, I think, that he's putting in more than what's being asked, and I think we discussed how he potentially could be one of, if not the very best superintendent in the state of Illinois in the near future, and that's something that I was hopeful of bringing him here to begin with. And while my children are aging out. There's families in my neighborhood. I have nieces. I'm so excited about the future here for Downers Grove, for Woodridge, Darien, our whole, our Westmont, our whole community in District 99, what this means, because we are this year moving forward with a $136 million referendum. And we're making sure that our superintendent, who is part of that whole process and instrumental in making that happen, is going to be here through the duration of this project, which I also think is incredibly important. So I'm sure that
it's not being paid for out of the referendum.
Yes.
It's being paid out of operational.
Absolutely. So I don't know if I had thought of, I didn't come prepared tonight with thoughts, but I want to assure everybody that this is still a very fiscally responsible board. Mm-hmm. That the fact that it took us a couple months to work through this was reflective of that, and that the community should be happy to know that they don't have a group of 7 people that absolutely agree on everything. We should not. And that the opinions of everybody is important, mm-hmm. and Rick's opinions, Dan's opinions were very much heard during the course of our deliberations. And we know that there are other people in the community that would share those opinions. And so it's important that those are shared and that we can talk about it and thoughtfully consider those things. And I think that that those differing opinions definitely influenced where we ended up in terms of a contract. And so while it may not be exactly what you folks were hoping for, it's more agreeable than perhaps it would have been if you hadn't shared in our closed sessions the way you did. So I'd like to thank the entire board for that thoughtful deliberation, and thank Dr. Thiele for agreeing to stay here.
All right. Last but not least.
Yes.
I did not come prepared either with a statement, but so I'll just speak a little bit for myself. I have been fortunate enough to be on this board with our previous 2 superintendents also. And that being said, I don't think that they were compensated at the level that they should have been, because they brought this district to a certain point. And our thinking is with the new superintendent, Dr. Thiele, would bring us to another level, and our students to another level. And I think that he's working towards that, and there is room to grow. And I'm very proud of the fact that we chose you to be our superintendent and our leader. And I think that our faculty and our staff feel the same way, that they're pleased to have you as their leader, and we want to keep you as our leader. And I feel that a compensation should be appropriate for that. And I don't have a problem with this contract, and I think that it gives you room to grow also. And with the goals that we're going to be setting for you, I think that that's very important, because it makes you know where you're going and makes our district know where they're going. And so with that, we really appreciate all the work that you do, and I hope it's reflected in this. So that's all I have to say.
Any more comments, or can we call the vote?
I call the vote.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller.
Aye.
Dan Nicholas.
No.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Rick Pavanato.
No.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye. Motion carries. Yes, please. You shake it.
First of all, I'd obviously like to thank the board, not only for extending the contract, or entering into the new contract, but as you all alluded to or said directly, the amount of work and heavy lifting you did coming to this point. I mean, these are not easy conversations. They're difficult deliberations amongst the board, and knowing who you're representing in that. And that's one of the things that I greatly appreciate about this board, is the fact that you just had a tough vote, you just had a tough conversation, and that this board will respect that decision, and you'll be able to move on to the next thing like nothing happened. You know, that you have important work to do for the students here and the community and our staff, and that you don't let disagreements get in the way of the important work that we do. I've seen a lot of boards, I've served on school boards, and this is by far the most functional and caring and thoughtful board that I've ever worked with. Every single one of you puts in the work, puts in the hard deliberation, really thinks long and hard about the decisions you're going to make. And this is no different than any other decision you make. Even, when the community sees a 7-0 vote, sometimes it doesn't look like this amount of work, but I know that they all are. And it's good, it's healthy, as Mike said. It's healthy for a board to come out with what they truly believe. And I feel supported by all of you. I know our staff does as well, and the community has seen the good work that this board has done in the past, and especially over the last year, as this was a quite challenging year for our school community and school communities in general. So I just, want to just formally thank the board for the vote, but thank you for everything else you do outside of that. And we got a lot of work to do over the next 5 years. Not just the master facility plan, we have a lot of leadership turning over. We're going to have 2 new principals to hire in that next 5 years.
No.
We're going to have half a dozen administrators to hire.
No.
So, we got a lot of hard decisions to make going forward, right? And I appreciate that you trust me to help lead the district in those aspects. And I also appreciate the board recognizing the fact that successful organizations retain their leaders. And this district has been successful because they've kept superintendents for long periods of time. And that allows superintendents to develop a vision or rapport and execute that with their teams. So I'm looking forward to continuing to do that and to the great things that we're going to do together. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to our second reception of visitors. This is the opportunity for audience members to address the board on any topic pertaining to Community High School District 99. Does anybody wish to address the board? Hearing none. We have a motion for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Terry moves, we adjourn.
Second.
Mike seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.